Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my movie vlog. My name is John Campea, and this is a special companion video to today's earlier episode. This is Wednesday, December the 27th. The companion video to my earlier episode of the John Campea Show, which aired this morning. Now, I had technical problems in that show. The second half of the show, when I take live viewer questions, didn't quite work. The microphone turned off, so there was no audio. So I want to make sure I get all of those questions answered, that the people who sent them in live get them answered. So that's what we are going to do with this particular video. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of disclaimers. Disclaimer number one, I'm sick, which you can probably hear right now. So I'm going to be doing some annoying things like coughing. I'm also going to be doing some annoying things like, having candy and lozenges in my mouth to help soothe my throat. And I'm going to be doing annoying things like stopping a lot and drinking water just so I can get through this. Hopefully I'll be feeling better the next couple of days. Now, I actually tried to do this video live a little bit earlier, but I am up at the Campea Ranch in Canada for the holidays. And unfortunately, the internet speeds are not fast enough to reliably stream a live show. So I'm going to be doing these pre-recorded. So with that out of the way, let's dive into the questions that came in today. And the first one that came in a little bit earlier today came to us from Manuel Fernandez, who writes, do you think Disney gets a bad rap as people say it, quote-unquote, wants to control everything or take over the world? I feel like it'd be bad for business if they, metaphorically speaking, controlled everything. Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. You don't want to control everything, but let's face it. Every company wants to control the world. Every company wants to totally dominate their space. That's the goal of every single company out there. Doesn't matter if it's a movie studio, whether it's a computer manufacturer, whether it's a sporting league or whatever. Every company in business wants to dominate their space. And Disney has just been making really good business moves. They decided moving forward, the best way to compete is to have streaming content. So they plan to have a 2019 launch of their own streaming service. Well, you need content for that type of a streaming service. So there was another studio that was looking to sell off a bunch of their content and intellectual property. So Disney swooped in and said, we'll buy it because we need it for this new streaming service. And away they go. So I really don't think this is them trying to dominate everything, but it is Disney trying to dominate their space just like every other company is doing. So honestly, I think they do things that look bad on them, but I don't think this is one of those things that looks bad on them. Just my opinion on that, though. Thanks a lot for the question, Manuel. All right, the next one comes to us from Star Wars Girl 91, who writes, even though you predicted a 60% drop or more for The Last Jedi's second weekend box office drop, should we be concerned with its current box office trajectory? All right. Thanks a lot for the question, Star Wars Girl. And, here's the funny thing. What she's referencing is that over a week ago, I put up a video, well over a week ago, I put up a video, said 4 reasons why Star Wars Last Jedi will drop at least 60% or more following in its second weekend. And I said in the video it would drop somewhere between 60 and 70%. And I gave 4 reasons why that was going to happen. Not the least of which, and this is the main thing, this is the first Star Wars movie ever to, on its second weekend, have 5, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 brand new wide release films opening on its second weekend. That's never happened before in history. And all 5 of these movies have some major recognizable celebrity names attached to them, not the least of which is like Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman, Jumanji with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, among others. Pardon me, guys. So that was just one of the reasons. I said there were some other reasons as well. The fact that it had such a big opening weekend, for it to drop under 60% would have meant it had to be the number 2 or number 3 biggest second weekend in history. There was some negative backlash to the film. Anyway, I gave 4 reasons why it would happen. So this needs to be completely expected. Now, should we be concerned? Not at all. Like I mentioned in the show earlier today, this is now a movie that in 11 days has crossed $800 million at the box office. Now, is it underperforming? Absolutely it is. Disney was probably expecting it to be a little bit ahead of that pace, for sure. But take expectations out of it. Take what were we expecting out of it just for a moment, and just look at it. A movie in theaters in 11 days, $800 million. Is that something to be concerned about? The answer is no. The answer is absolutely not. So I can't argue with you if you want to make the case that it could have been better and maybe should have been further ahead in its box office than it is. You can make that argument, and that's totally a valid argument. But if you want to take pre-existing expectations out of it and just look at how is this movie done and how is it doing? The fact of the matter is, The Last Jedi, in its second weekend, opening against 5 brand new opening weekend major wide release films, still became the number 13 biggest second weekend in cinematic history. Opening against 5 brand new films that got wide release. To me, that's fine. Could it have done better? Yes. Can you make an argument that it's underperforming? Yes, you can, and that's a valid argument. But is there something to be concerned about? No, I don't think so, not at all. That's why I predicted this over a week ago. Anyway, thanks a lot for the question, Star Wars Girl. Next one comes to us from ToonyTube, and ToonyTube writes, "Hey, John from Germany." Well, hello, thanks for writing from Germany. "I get more confused. Sometimes I read how much the audience likes The Last Jedi, and then I read how much the audience hates the movie. Where are we now? Like your show, and I'm with you on many of your opinions." Well, thanks a lot for the question, Tony, or Toonie, I should say, and thanks for sending that in. Here's the thing. People, and we all do this. We all do this. I do it sometimes, you do it sometimes, we all do this sometimes. What people tend to do is if they have an opinion, they will cherry pick out specific facts that support their opinion and then ignore all the other data that doesn't support their opinion. So, out of all the surveys and everything out there, there is one, that's the Rotten Tomatoes audience meter, that suggests that 50% or almost 50% of the people out there don't like The Last Jedi. Because I think right now it's hovering around at 52% or something like that. However, while those people who don't like The Last Jedi are quick to point out that one fact and that one piece of data, what they consistently do is try to pretend like all the other pieces of data aren't there. The cinema score, which is the only truly reliable audience rating meter because it's the only one that actually verifies it's talking to people who saw the movie. None of the other ones can do that. You can get people out there, oh, this one's got a female lead, screw that movie then, downvote, and they never saw it. They can do that on there. CinemaScore doesn't allow that. They actually go physically to the theaters and verify somebody just saw the movie and then take their vote and take it once. So anyway, there's that. So the CinemaScore was an A. IMDb, which is just as flawed as the Rotten Tomatoes system, but if you want to look at the Rotten Tomatoes system, then you can't ignore the IMDb one because they're the same thing. The IMDb rating is almost 80%. Mashable, through SurveyMonkey, one of the biggest polling things out there, did a poll, a clean poll, and found 89% of the people surveyed who saw the movie liked The Last Jedi. 89%. Then you're looking at critic ratings. Metacritic score is 86. The Rotten Tomatoes critic score is over 90. So if you want to look at pieces of data, don't just look at one. You got to look at all of them. You got to look at all of them or look at none of them. And while the Rotten Tomatoes audience meter there is one piece of data, and it's something that we should acknowledge and look at, so yeah, it's around 52%. We don't ignore it. There it is. However, there's also IMDb, there's also CinemaScore, there's also the Mashable rating, there's also the critic ratings on Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes. Then there's all this other pieces of data that people want you to ignore and pretend don't exist. We shouldn't exist that the Rotten Tomatoes one exists either. It's there. But look, there are people out there, I keep saying this, I'm going to keep saying it. There are people out there who, with an open mind, watched The Last Jedi and it didn't work for them. That's great. That's the subjectivity of film. It didn't hit them the right way, and it didn't work for them, and they left disappointed, maybe mildly, maybe severely, whatever, and it didn't work for them. Totally fine. There are people out there, and there's not an insignificant number of them, who feel that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, the majority of people who saw The Last Jedi like it. All the data points to that, except for the one piece of data, which is the Rotten Tomatoes one. So we have to keep that in mind. So, look, I also think it's fair to say this. There are more people out there who dislike The Last Jedi than Disney's comfortable with. I mean, Disney wanted 9 out of every 10 people to love the movie, for sure. Do 9 out of every 10 people who saw The Last Jedi love it? No, it's less than that. So I'm sure they're not happy with it. But it's not 50-50, it's not even 60-40. It's probably closer to a 70-30 if you want to look at all the data. But still, they're there and it's a real thing. But no matter whether you're somebody who likes the movie or don't like the movie, what other people think should just be interesting to you. It shouldn't change your opinion. Whether 50% of the people love The Last Jedi or 90% of the people love The Last Jedi, if you didn't like it, none of that should change your mind. And vice versa, if you like the movie and 50% of the people didn't like it, that shouldn't change your mind either. It's just interesting to note. All right, that's just the way I look at it, Toonie. All right, the next one we have comes up here from Jose M, who writes, John, I heard you're going to put a top 10 best films of 2017. Will you also do a top 10 worst films? Would love to hear you tear them to shreds, especially Transformers 5. Yes, as a matter of fact, in the next couple of days, I'm going to be putting up my best films of 2017 and my worst films of 2017, as well as a couple of other end-of-the-year types of videos. Those are coming. Keep your eyes open for them. Thanks for asking, Jose. All right. The next one comes to us from Ben Rayner. And Ben Rayner writes, Hey, John, I hope you're having a good holiday. Thank you so much, Ben. For those of you who followed me on social media, you'll know that my flight got canceled on Christmas Eve to be home for Christmas morning. So I didn't get here for Christmas morning. Flights got delayed, then canceled. Then the next flight got delayed. The hotel that the airline put us up into was booked by the time we got there. We had to go to a different hotel. Then we got to the Toronto airport and our rental car company canceled our reservation because we were late because our previous flight was canceled. I had to take an Uber from Toronto to Hamilton, which was a $170 Uber ride. I kid you not. And I finally got home around 11 or 11:30 p.m. on Christmas night. But we are here, we're safe and we're sound, we're enjoying our friends and our family and having a wonderful Christmas holiday. Thank you so much for asking. And I got sick. Anyway, all right, let's move on here. Manuel Fernandez writes, most pleasant surprise this year, Power Rangers, Girls Trip, Happy Death Day, or Jumanji? Great question. There have been a couple of really great pleasant surprise movies that I was not expecting anything out of. Like going down your list, Power Rangers, I thought that would be terrible, and I actually ended up kind of liking that film. Girls Trip, I thought that would be a throwaway little cheap comedy and ended up being really good. Happy Death Day, I thought would be like a throwaway low-budget horror film. It was wonderful. And, you know, coming off of Baywatch, I don't know what kind of expectations I had for Jumanji. And I actually thoroughly enjoyed Jumanji. But if you're going to ask me what was the biggest pleasant surprise movie for me, I'm going to go with Girls Trip. That movie, I am so ravagingly entertained by that movie. I can watch that movie every day. I've only seen it like 6 times, but because I bought it on the Google Play Store, so I watch it every once in a while. I love that movie completely. I haven't made my top 10 list yet. It might threaten to get into my top 10. Girls Trip. It's just so oddly entertaining. I love that movie. Anyway, thanks a lot for the question, Manuel. All right. Harris Music writes, so Warner Brothers are still going with the existing DCEU and Flashpoint is still happening. What changes will be made, do you think? More color? Batman vs. Superman never happened? Well, here's the thing. If you listen to all the official stuff that's being said right now, it looks like Warner Brothers is moving ahead with the DCEU as is. That's a mistake. They need to reboot this thing. A lot of good things can happen if you reboot. We've seen that happen with comic book properties. We've seen companies have big success with rebooting their properties. Warner Brothers says they're still moving ahead with it. Obviously, you have to put out Aquaman. Warner Brothers has no choice there because Aquaman's already shot. It's in the can. So you have to do that one. I'd be shocked if they didn't do Wonder Woman 2 because Wonder Woman was the one DCEU film that both critics and audiences loved. Shazam is probably going to happen. They keep moving forward with that, and they're saying they're going to do Flashpoint, but I'll be honest with you. I'm still not convinced that they're not going to reboot. I know there are discussions at Warner Brothers about rebooting. I know there are discussions going on there. And I don't think they've 100% come to a conclusion about what it is they're going to do. And look, Aquaman doesn't come out for another year. So they've got a lot of time to figure this out. So could they keep moving forward? They could. Currently, it looks like they keep moving forward, but I think it's only going to look like that until they make a final decision. And I still think there's a chance that they do the smart thing here and reboot. But that's just my thoughts on that. All right. Let's move on now to the next question. And the next question comes to us from James Smith. And James Smith writes, good day, John. Good day, James. I was wondering why there are no movie theaters that are 24/7. And is it even a small chance it ever will be? I feel like I'm not the only one who would go to the movies at 1 a.m. or 5 a.m. Well, James, you're not the only person who would go to a movie theater at 1 a.m. or 5 a.m. However, there's not many of you who would. It'd be a very small number. Believe me, if the theaters thought they could make money being open at 3 a.m., other than on the opening weekend of a Star Wars film or a DCEU film or a Marvel film, which they do sometimes, they would. If they thought they could make money doing that, they would. But the reality is not many people would go. And here's the other reality. Every minute that a movie theater is open and the doors are open and the lights are on costs them money. Whether you're talking about power, or you're talking about heat or air conditioning, or you're talking about having food being ready to go in case people come in to order it, on top of all the staff that you got to pay, every minute that a movie theater is open costs them money. And I just really highly doubt that you'd be in a position that you'd get enough people going to a movie at 3 a.m., again, other than a major opening weekend of a Star Wars, DCEU, or Marvel film. I really doubt you're going to get enough people coming in at 3 a.m. to justify and overcome the cost of the theater even being open. So on that level, I really don't think we're ever going to see a 24/7 theater. I really don't. I mean, there might be some examples of little ones that do it here and there. That will probably happen, but as far as a wide scale thing like the AMC Burbank 16, is that going to be open 24/7? I really don't think so. But hey, stranger things have happened, right? Let's see what happens. All right, the next question comes to us from Jose M, who writes, over under 60% that Infinity War breaks The Last Jedi's opening weekend box office. I'm going to take under. Actually, I would set the line at 25%, not 60. Look, let's look at history. The first Avengers movie made about $200 million opening weekend. Fantastic. The second one, Age of Ultron, now that you've built up even more, Age of Ultron had magnificent marketing, all that kind of stuff. And what did it do opening weekend? It made a hell of a lot of money, but not as much as the first Avengers. So it ended up making about 190 something, I think. So it made less than the first Avengers. I don't see anything pointing us to Infinity War making even more. I mean, everybody who's going to go see it would have gone to see Ultron opening weekend too, so I don't see it happening. Is it possible? Absolutely. I wouldn't set the line at 2% or 5%, but I will set the line at 25%. And if you set the line at 26, I'm going to take the over, or I'll take the under. So I really think the odds are is that it doesn't. If it does, great. But I think it'll crack 200 million, but getting over 220, that's a tall order. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's find out. It would be awesome if I was wrong. Antonio de Grandis writes, for those who think Star Wars is in trouble, The Last Jedi crossed $800 million in 2 weeks, actually crossed it in 11 days. Star Wars is just fine. We talked about that a little bit earlier on today's show. You're right. It is doing it. Again, is it meeting expectations? No. Anybody who wants to make the argument that it's falling short of expectations, you're absolutely right. There's no arguing that. You are 100% right. However, once we take expectations out and say, how is The Last Jedi doing as a movie? Well, $800 million in 11 days. 13th biggest second weekend in cinematic history. Second biggest opening weekend in cinematic history. Despite the fact that it opened on its second weekend against 5 brand new films in wide release. So yes, it's doing fine. So for those of you saying The Last Jedi is doing just fine, you're right. It absolutely is. There's no way you can argue around that. For those of you who would argue that it's falling short of expectations, you are also right. There is no way around that. But those two things are not mutually exclusive. You're both right. All right, let's move on here. James Smith writes, how can one get any career in the movie field as far as a movie critic or movie reviewer or even a job at a theater HQ? I really want a career watching movies. Well, have a skill at it. And then the best thing I can say is I did a 2-hour video and I'm going to update it here this year sometime. But I did a 2-hour video a couple years ago. Just jump on YouTube and search for John Campea Getting Started. And it's a full 2-hour video about getting started in podcasting, YouTube channeling, all that kind of stuff if you want to get into this type of a space. So I do a full 2 hours. Some of the stuff in that video is stuff you don't want to hear. But some of it is stuff you do want to hear. So I would say go and check that out. Thanks a lot for the question. All right. The next question. Again, I'm sorry, guys. I'm having to suck on the lozenges. If I'm not, I'm going to cough up a lung. Dimsum05 writes, how does YouTube Red affect your YouTube ads? Thanks. Well, YouTube Red, I'm not exactly clear on how YouTube works and how YouTube Red works, but the basic thing is this. If you're a subscriber to YouTube Red, you don't watch ads. Ads don't play for you in front of YouTube videos. Yay! The problem is, if you're watching my videos, that means I don't get any ad revenue from you watching my videos. Boo! But what YouTube does is, depending on how many views your video gets, they give you a cut of the YouTube Red money. So I gotta say, YouTube has been pretty good and pretty consistent with giving me as a YouTube creator, every month I get a certain amount of money from them as my share of the YouTube Red revenue, because X number of people who are YouTube Red subscribers watch my videos, so they give me a cut of that. So at the end of the day, I haven't done any deep research on it, but I think it ends up balancing out pretty good. I'll have to look at somebody who's done a further in-depth research on that, but as of right now, I think it kind of balances out. Thanks a lot for the question, Dim Sum. All right. Next one comes to us from Jose M, who writes, John, any chance you might invite Michael Rapaport for the John Campea Show live show? I remember one of his hilarious appearances on Collider doing his classic rants. Oh, I like Michael Rapaport very much. I think the dude's very funny. However, am I going to invite him on the John Campea Show? No. Why not? Because I don't like him? Absolutely not. That has nothing to do with it. It's just the fact that I do this. I don't have a studio with a staff, with cameramen and switchers. It's me sitting in front of a camera by myself, changing graphics, doing all this stuff all by myself. To do it with another person just isn't practical. So I probably will not be inviting him on. Don't get me wrong. If Michael out of nowhere emailed me and said, Campea, I wanted to be on your show with you, I'll figure it out. But I'm not going to go and try to get him to make time in his schedule to come and do something like that. So no, that probably won't happen. Thanks a lot for the question though, Jose. Let's see. Next one comes to us from Chris Warden, who writes, Happy holidays, Johns. Happy holidays to you as well, Chris. I hope you feel better. Not yet, but I'm getting there. Got an age-old question that movie fans have been asking for decades. Who wins in a fight between two Detroit super cops, Axel Foley or Robocop? Oh, that's simple. Robocop. Axel Foley is great. And if it was a battle of best one-liners, Axel Foley wins. However, in a drag-him-out fight between Robocop and Axel Foley, sorry, Axel, it's going to go to Robocop every time. All right, this next one comes to us from Manuel Fernandez, who writes, Does historical accuracy ever have an impact on your enjoyment of a biopic? For instance, in The Greatest Showman? No. Absolutely not. Nor should it. No film critic. I feel very strongly about this. No film critic should ever shade their review of a movie based on how historically accurate is the movie. That's not your job. Your job is not to be a history professor. Your job is to review the film. And I've expressed this many times before. I don't go into a movie to watch a history lesson. If I want historical accuracy, I expect that from my documentaries, not from my movies that are loosely based on true events. I mean, do we throw out Inglourious Bastards because they got the Nazis wrong and how Hitler died and they got that all wrong? No. Do we throw out The Conjuring because not everything happened exactly as the way they do it in the movies? No. These are not documentaries. Do I think watching The Greatest Showman that everything that happened in The Greatest Showman is exactly how it was in the real life of P.T. Barnum? No. But my job as a film critic is just to talk about the movie. Was the movie good? Was the movie entertaining? Did it give me a great experience? It's not a documentary. And it is a huge pet peeve of mine when film critics who see themselves as history professors shade their review based on, well, that's not what really happened in real life, so I give this a negative review. That's not your fucking job. Your job is not to tell me whether or not this is historically accurate. Your job is to tell me, is it a good movie? Just as a movie, is it good or not? Does it give me a good experience? Does it bring me into it? Do I have a good time watching it? All that kind of stuff. That's what you should be reviewing. The movie, not the history lesson. So, no, I never let how historically accurate a movie is. Like, I'll bring it up. Like, hey, just so you know, in this movie it says they did this when actually they did this, but whatever, it doesn't affect the movie. I will never let the historical accuracy of a movie, or lack thereof, affect how I view a film. Because I just go to watch a movie for the movie. That's it. I'm not going for history lessons when I watch a film. Unless it's a documentary. All right. The next one comes to us from Rob McDonald. I'm going to take a sip of water while I'm doing this. All right. And Rob McDonald, once again, guys, I have to apologize for the fact that I'm struggling so much, but hey, I'm sick. What can I do? Rob McDonald writes, I'm a proud fan of yours from Mississauga. I'm not far from Mississauga right now. Keep up the great work. Any chance you'll be doing a meetup during your time back in Canada? I don't think so. I don't really think I'm going to have the time to do a meet and greet. Plus, I don't think I actually have enough viewers or fans, per se, in this area to justify doing a meet and greet. So, pardon me. So, no, I will probably not be doing one this trip. But I might come down to Toronto for the next Fan Expo. And if I do come down for the next Fan Expo, I will arrange a meet and greet for everybody in Southern Ontario who wants to do that. Thanks a lot for the question, man. All right. Next one comes to us from Stephen Gonzalez, who writes, in this fantasy, both video game movies are guaranteed to be successful. A James Cameron directed Horizon Zero Dawn or Guillermo del Toro Bioshock film. Your choice. Oh, Guillermo del Toro Bioshock film, for sure. That's more because of Bioshock than, say, James Cameron versus Guillermo del Toro. But I also did just get out of, not just, but just in recent weeks, I saw The Shape of Water, which is amazing. By the way, keep your eyes open for my top 10 videos of the year list. There's a little sneak peek. The Shape of Water is going to be on it. There you go. I gave that away. So more because of the Bioshock element of it, I will go with Guillermo del Toro Bioshock film. That'll be my guess. That would be my pick, I should say. Let's see. Harsh Baed writes, hey, John, if you could swap one actor between the DCEU and MCU, who would they be? Mine would be Ezra Miller as Peter and Tom Holland as Barry. Oh, that's a good one. Because, yeah, you're talking about a couple of fairly comparable guys for different levels. Look, don't get me wrong, I still think Ezra Miller is great as Flash, and Tom Holland is great as Spider-Man. I would keep them where they are, but if you had to swap, yeah, that one, because that would be that would be the most compatible, I think. Good comparison. I like that one. All right. Let's go to this one. Koba is writing, could Tarantino's Star Trek movie use the Next Generation crew? I highly doubt it. The Last Generation, the next generation, I should say, is done. They've wrapped that up. They're not going to get anywhere moving backwards. So is it possible they could? Absolutely it is. There's some nostalgia value. Could Tarantino's film be a Next Generation crew-centric film? No way. I just can't see that happening. Again, anything's possible. I could be wrong, but I would fall out of my chair in shock if they did that. Like, absolute shock. All right. Next one comes to us from Brandon Torres, who writes, hey, John, Star Wars is not about the Skywalkers, but the episodic saga is. Kathy Kennedy has called it the Skywalker saga many times. Doesn't matter. It's not. It's simply not. You could totally call the episodic stuff we've had up till now the Skywalker saga. You can call it that. Absolutely you can. But guess what? I mean, not to give any spoilers away, but we're moving on from the Skywalkers in Star Wars. When we get into episode 10, 11, and 12, there's not going to be any more Skywalkers left. They're going to be gone. No more Skywalkers. Bye-bye. So you can call it the Skywalker saga if you want up to this point, and you're justified because up to this point, the episodic movies have been about primarily focused around Luke and Vader. Skywalkers. So that's fair. You can do that. But to suggest that means from now on, all the episodic movies are going to be Skywalker because they are supposed to be Skywalker movies. No, they're not. They have been up till now, but they weren't previous to that, and they're not going to be moving forward. So you can say, yeah, episodes 1 through 9, if you want to say those have been Skywalker-centric movies. Fair enough. Even though Kylo Ren technically is not a Skywalker, he's a Solo, but whatever. If you want to say episodes 1 through 9 have been Skywalker saga films, fine. But 10, 11, and 12 will not be. So no, the Star Wars saga is not about the Skywalkers. These episodes have been, But all the story lore before that is not, and all the stuff that's going to come after it is not. So we just got to get used to that. All right. Next one comes to us from Jamie. And Jamie writes, if Captain America's costume can work live in Winter Soldier and Civil War, then a Wolverine costume can also. No, it does not. That is a ridiculous comparison. Oh, if the Captain America one can work, then that means this one, then that means this yellow spandex can too. No, it can't. If it could have worked, they would have done it a long time ago. If the Wolverine costume could have worked, they would have done it. I guarantee you, they have gone through hundreds of costume designs. And every single time they've gone, okay, that looks ridiculous, that looks ridiculous, that looks ridiculous. On the comic book page, it works great. In a cartoon, it works great. Captain America's outfit works on the big screen and on the printed page. Wolverine's tight yellow spandex will not. It will look silly and dumb. You may have a different opinion. That's totally fine. But understanding how many people out there would love to see Wolverine in his classic costume, every time they've done a movie with Logan in it, they have looked at 100 new possible costume designs that reflect the classic yellow spandex look. And every time they've gone, no, we can't put that on screen. That looks just fucking stupid. They've done that every single time. So that is a terrible comparison. Saying, hey, if that one works, that means any costume can work. No, they do not. They are two different costumes with two different sets of advantages and disadvantages. You cannot compare those two whatsoever. They're not in the same ballpark as each other. One works, was done. Like, you might as well say, well, if Batman's costume can work in the comic books and on the big screen, that means Wolverine's can too. No, it does not. Batman's translates well to the big screen, to a live action environment. That Wolverine costume will not transfer well. It will not transfer well. And you may have a different opinion, and that's totally cool, but I just got to disagree with you on that wholeheartedly, man. But thank you so much for the question, Jamie. I appreciate it. All right. Star Wars Girl 19 writes in, thoughts on the report that Disney believes that Solo will bomb. Well, we talked about that actually on the John Campea Show earlier today. Just to reemphasize that whole thing, follow the chain of source. What's the source for that story? And the source is this website no one's ever heard of, claiming they have an anonymous source. That in their claim, they say, number one, Alden Ehrenreich can't act, which is ridiculous because we've seen him act. We've seen him be in a movie with George Clooney and Ralph Fiennes and Jonah Hill and Scarlett Johansson, and he upstaged all of them. I'm talking about Hail Caesar. He was magnificent in that movie. Plus, the report also says, the script is just unworkable. Really? The script by Lawrence Kasdan, the multi-Oscar-nominated writer, who also wrote The Empire Strikes Back, you're saying that guy wrote a script that's just unworkable. Is that what you're saying? You expect me to believe that? So anyway, I would suggest go back and watch today's episode of the John Campea Show, where I go more in depth on that and talk about that, but it's a bogus, I don't believe that report whatsoever. And I explain why it shouldn't be believed, but hey, anything's possible. It absolutely is. Again, go back and watch that video. That'll explain my position a little bit more on that. All right, we keep moving here. This one comes to us from Unicorn Khan. What a great name. 379, who writes, it's great that you love movies and created this space. Thank you so much. You are respectful when addressing others' opinions while also being honest with your opinions. Well, I mean, that's all you can do, right? Here's the thing. You don't have to agree with somebody else's opinion. You can wholeheartedly disagree with somebody else's opinion and be passionate about that disagreement. For instance, we just had the issue about Wolverine's yellow spandex. I'm emphatic that I do not believe that at all. I think that's a totally bad idea. However, you still need to respect that somebody else holds that opinion. That doesn't mean pretend that you think their idea is a good idea. No, you can be against an idea or a thought or an opinion and be 100% against that thought or opinion and express it that way while still saying, but I respect the fact that you have a different opinion, and that's great. I think it's a dumb idea. Here's all the reasons I think it's a totally dumb idea. But I respect that it is your opinion, you have it, and there you go. So some people think that to respect somebody else's opinion means you have to agree with their opinion. Not at all. Not at all. Some of my best conversations with my best friends are like So, like, are you freaking stupid? And obviously, we're just speaking in hyperbole, and we'll go at it. But I totally respect that that's their opinion, even if I completely disagree with it. And I think that's when fandom works best, is when we all find that line where we can be respectful to the person holding an opinion while maybe even disrespecting the opinion itself without losing respect for those holding it or their right to have it. So I think that's an important distinction. So thank you for bringing that up. All right. Another one comes to us from Brandon Torres, who writes, if Star Wars can build a great hero, Rey, and at the same time make one of the best villains in years, Kylo, why is the MCU only able to focus on heroes? Well, I mean, the DCEU is the same thing. Look, the MCU has made a decision, Kevin Feige's talked about this numbers of times, that they want their movies to focus on their heroes. And they see the villains as just a plot mechanisms to move the hero along their hero's journey. That's what they want their movies to be. Now, we may see them try something a little bit different with Thanos, but for the most part, that's the way they feel their movies work best, with the focus majorly on the heroes themselves, and the villains becoming a plot device to simply move the hero along their hero's journey. They've made that decision, and you cannot argue with the results. It's worked really well for them. That doesn't mean everybody needs to do it that way. And that doesn't mean Disney has or Marvel has to copy somebody else. The way they do it works for them. And you know what? DC's been the same thing. Other than when the Joker showed up, like look at Justice League. Steppenwolf is nothing but a simple plot device to move the heroes along their hero journey. So they actually took a little bit from Marvel there, but it worked for them because I thought Justice League was a good movie. I know a lot of people disagree. That's cool. I liked it. But they're doing it that way because that's what they think is the best way to do it for their movies. And they feel they're having success with it. So that's why they continue to do it. All right. Good point, Brandon. Thanks for bringing that up. All right. Shavome Dixit writes, hey, John, Patreon supporter and send super chats frequently. You certainly do, Shavome. Which I'm sure you're tired of answering. I never get tired of answering good questions from movie fans, man. Love your vids and will always support your work. I always look forward to watching your vids after a tiring day of school. Love you. Well, thank you so much, Shavome. I really appreciate that, man. Just you taking time out just to say that to me. That means a lot, especially on this holiday season. Thank you so much. All right. Next one comes to us from Koba. And Koba writes, are giant monster movies making a comeback? Pacific Rim, Godzilla, King Kong, and even smaller films like Colossal. Which, by the way, I did not like Colossal. I remember, I think I watched it the first time. I was like, oh, that was all right. And then I watched it again recently with Anne. I'm like, no, I don't like this movie at all. And I know some people that I really respect that just love that movie, but whatever. I don't know. I don't know if you can call 4 films over the span of 3 or 4 years a big comeback. I think they're trying. Look, blockbusters are the rage. And giant monster movies are prime candidates to be blockbusters. So they're certainly there. Let's see what happens. Like, look, Godzilla did not blow the doors off the box office. Neither did King Kong. Neither did Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim barely broke even. So we have yet to see a giant monster movie crush it at the box office. Will the next Pacific Rim do it? Maybe. Will the next Godzilla? Maybe. Will Godzilla versus King Kong do it? Maybe. I don't know. But so far, none of these giant monster movies have completely blown up the box office. So, are they back? I'm not ready to say they're back yet. I think they're trying to come back, but let's see what happens after the next couple of giant monster movies. All right. This one comes to us from Cisse, who writes, The Last Jedi disappointed me because it went in a direction that I wasn't expecting. Retrospectively, after a second viewing, that's exactly what I want in a film. I mean, and there is the big dilemma with a lot of people. Like, you'll see a lot of memes that, The Force Awakens comes out, Star Wars fans. This is just too much of the same. The Last Jedi comes out. You're not giving me enough of what I recognize. I mean, so it's like, and that's the conundrum, right? And I'm finding people like you, Cisse, who are having that personal, struggle. It's like, wait a minute. At first I didn't like it, disappointed me because it wasn't what I was expecting. But then I saw it a second time and realized that's exactly what I want. I mean, and I think The Last Jedi is doing that for a lot of people. Either positively or negatively, it's putting us in this position. It's like, wait a minute. We've been demanding something new from Star Wars. And now they give us something new. And there are a bunch of people who are really upset because it's not what we expected, not what we wanted. But they give us The Force Awakens, and everybody's complaining it's a carbon copy of the original. It's too much the same. So I think we, as individual fans, are having some legitimate struggles ourselves with it. For me, it worked perfectly. Yes, I didn't like the what they had Rose and Finn do. Yes, I didn't like Benicio del Toro's character. Yes, I didn't like the Maz Kanata forced in, shoehorned into appearance. I hated everything about that damn casino planet. Yes. But the rest of the movie, I love what they did, especially with what they did with Luke. I love the way they handled Luke. So anyway, there's that. But I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people in the same boat as you, Cisse, that it's like, how do I feel about this? And a lot of people are just unsure, positively or negatively. I think a lot of people are just struggling with it. All right. Last couple of ones here. Christy, 1929 writes, did you see the video of Hamill's expression after The Last Jedi premiere? He looked like he was so shocked. Any chance he didn't know Luke died? Oh, no. He read the whole script. And I didn't need to see Mark Hamill's video at The Last Jedi premiere. I saw him many times at The Last Jedi premiere. And believe me, every time I saw him, he was glowing and raving about the movie. He loves this movie. He loves it. And we talked about that a little bit earlier on the John Campea Show. Go and watch that subject there about Mark Hamill finally put out an official statement. And you know what? I'll bring up that statement right now. But there are some people, and I mentioned this in the video earlier today, who are cherry picking out isolated statements that Mark made to make it sound like he doesn't like the movie, when in context, he always did. So finally, Mark Hamill put out the statement, just to be clear about it. Hamill put out this tweet. He says, I regret voicing my doubts and insecurities in public. Creative differences are common elements in any project, but usually remain private. All I wanted was to make a good movie, and I got more than that. Rian Johnson made an all-time great movie. So that's Mark Hamill's, what he thinks about The Last Jedi. He's always made that clear since he saw the movie. It's just that people haven't been listening to him. Anyway. All right, let's move on here. The next one comes to us from Kevin King. And Kevin King writes, have you ever seen Street Fighter Assassin's Fist? Greatest video game movie ever made, although it does not count because it was not released in theaters. I have not. Unless it's the one I'm... You know what? I've got one in my head that I saw. But I do not think the one I'm thinking of was Street Fighter Assassin's Fist. So I could be wrong, but I believe my answer is no, that I have not seen it yet. But now you've got me intrigued. I'm going to go look it up. See if it is the one that I saw before. And if not, I'll check that one out. Thank you for the recommendation, Kevin King. All right. Next one, and this is the last one of the day, comes to us from Manuel Fernandez, who writes, saw Shape of Water. Loved it. I like to compare Guillermo del Toro to Miyazaki, since both use their vast creativity to present to the audience vast fantasy worlds that don't rely on exposition to be explained. Do you agree? For the most part. I mean, Guillermo del Toro is pretty good at using exposition, though. We've seen that in a number of his films. He'll use exposition, and even in The Shape of Water, there's a couple of scenes with Michael Shannon that are used as straight exposition, because exposition is not a bad thing. Exposition is just another tool in a filmmaker's tool belt. If you use it at the right time in the right way, it's incredibly effective. Just some filmmakers rely too much on exposition. Guillermo del Toro is one of those filmmakers who knows how to find the great balance between good exposition and going and explaining things through visuals instead. There is a time and a place for good exposition, and Guillermo del Toro seems to know when to do that, including in The Shape of Water, but for the most part, I agree with Manuel. I totally do. All right, guys. That will do it for this installment of this companion video to the John Campea Show. Again, my apologies to anybody who was watching the John Campea Show earlier when we had the technical problem. I apologize for that. Will not happen again. And I apologize once again for the coughing and the hall sucking and the water drinking and all that kind of stuff, just because I'm sick and it's the only way I'm going to be able to get through these videos. But thank you for joining me here today. That'll do it for me, guys. Thanks for joining. My name is John Campea, and until my next video, bye-bye.